Welcome back. Now that South Africa has hit the second wave of COVID-19 infections, there is growing concerns over super spreader events as people are out and about during the festive season. Now, to discuss the way forward in the fight against COVID-19 and also to weigh in on the Chief Justice Mogoeng's comments on vaccines, let's bring in Professor Barry Schoub, the chairman of the Ministerial Advisory Committee on COVID-19 and Virology Expert. A very good afternoon to you, Professor, and thank you very much for your time. So, we have got an address, or at least a family meeting this evening. How does the President approach tonight?
Yeah, well, it's difficult to read his mind and even to read the government's mind. But clearly, I think something has to be done in terms of trying to limit the spread. We're really kind of going into the second wave now. Well, firstly, we're officially in the second wave. But in some parts of the country, particularly down on the coasts, the Eastern and Western Cape, the disease, and KwaZulu-Natal, the disease is expanding rapidly. All the parameters that we look at have shown that, in fact, there's a rapid expansion, and we really are truly well into the second wave. So we need to really be cautious. And I expect and I hope that the President will come out with some kind of means to try and slow down the spread. If it's not as severe restrictions, are clear, we know we can't go back into a lockdown, but at least some kind of restriction to at least limit human behavior which promotes the spread of the virus.
Prof, who do we blame for this second wave? Do we blame the average teenager that has gone out to a rage fest? Do we blame the parent that has allowed the average teenager to go out there? Or do we blame the government for not being hard on the restrictions that they've put in place in level lockdown 1?
Look, I think there are many factors which contribute. I think you're right. I think that the rage festivals did contribute substantially to the spread of the virus. But also, I think you have to remember that the majority of people have not seen the virus. The majority of people in the country as a whole are in fact still susceptible to the virus. So that virus builds up, it comes into a susceptible population, and that's the way it spreads. Now, there are various factors which will promote that spread. Paramount amongst those are what we call super spreading events. And the super spreading events are where people congregate together in large numbers. Social distancing goes by, so people come into close physical contact with each other. Masks often come down. Alcohol promotes this as well. And also singing, shouting, cheering, and so on and so forth. All of these factors will promote the spread of the virus. So in designing how to kind of in designing measures to try and limit that spread, one has to try and pinpoint where is the spread taking place, how is the spread taking place, and focus down those measures to try and limit that.
What do you make of, Prof, what do you make of the Chief Justice's comments? I mean, he, of course, has been making the news headlines for the last 2 or 3 days for some of the things that he said at the Tembisa Hospital. What do you make of those comments?
Well, I guess like most kind of people in my profession, this is, we're trying our best to try and address the epidemic. And the kind of major way in which we can address the epidemic is vaccines. And vaccines have been shown in many, many infectious diseases to be remarkably effective. You only have to look at smallpox, polio, measles, all those virus infections, which vaccines have been paramount in bringing them under control. So really, vaccines is what we're really looking at. And unfortunately, for vaccines to be effective, it needs 2 things. It needs the vaccine to be effective, obviously, and we need good coverage. And coverage depends on buy-in, as well as the availability of the vaccine, of course. But we do rely on people's buy-in to get vaccinated. And, there are 2 obstacles to that. The one obstacle are what you call the anti-vaxxers. Anti-vaxxers are people who are militantly opposed to vaccination, and that's usually based on various conspiracy theories and myths and so on, which have no scientific foundation. But then we also have the vaccine hesitant people that are genuinely hesitant because these are new vaccines. The trials have been quite rapid. The development of the vaccine has been extraordinarily rapid. So there is some room for people to kind of feel a bit unsure. And it's our duty to try and assure people that they've gone through extremely rigorous safety evaluation before these vaccines are licensed at various steps, from the trial steps all the way to licensure. So these are extraordinarily safe vaccines, and ostensibly they look as if they're very effective vaccines. But we do need people to kind of buy in. And unfortunately, when remarks such as what the Chief Justice said, and he said he's not an anti-vaxxer.
Yeah.
I think he's just kind of that certain vaccines will have various contaminants put into them, which can maybe change the DNA, there's absolutely no scientific evidence of that at all. So what he's claiming in terms that these vaccines may be harmful, there really is absolutely no scientific evidence to support it.
Yeah. Prof, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That is Professor Barry Schoub, who is the chairman of the Ministerial Advisory Committee on COVID-19 and a virology expert.